it's kind of overcast that day. We knew this storm was coming. Didn't know when or what it'd be like.
And it was yellow and quiet and really, you know, just unbelievably calm. And everything had a yellow tint to it. I mean, it was hard to breathe. It was stifling.
I got a phone call from my uncle. And it said, y'all get under the beds, there's a cyclone coming. And none of us knew what a cyclone was, so we immediately go outside and start looking.
The pressure drops so fast, it's like putting your hands like this and sucking like that.
We heard this awful roar, and it was like 1,000 freight trains. And we just looked up, and the sky was black and just full of debris, and it was just spinning and spinning and spinning, and I was just mesmerized. I just froze.
It was just a dark cloud coming, going down. That's where it was. It went down, and then you see it come up, just like something was mowing a lawn or something.
And it was horrifying.
Next thing we knew, the serviceman from Warner Robins called us and said, we've had a disaster. It's just struck South Pleasant Hill Road, and it's coming into our apartments, Ziegler Apartments.
I was in the Ziegler Apartments about 4 rows up from where the tornado flattened everything.
It was just total devastation.
Well, it's kind of like going to another world, you know. You see things like pine needles, pine straw driven through pine trees, or driven halfway through pine trees. 2x4s all the way through cars.
I just stopped my car right in the middle of the road, and this officer said, "Lady, you got to move that car." I said, "You move it. My house is not down. My house is blown down." And it was totally.
And there was so much of the mud and dirt on the ground that you didn't even really realize anybody was there until you would see the mud start to move, and then you would see the blood. You see the red blood against the black mud, and I remember that more than anything else.
We taking them from the South Ziegler and taking them into the base and kept them in the hospital. You couldn't put them in rooms, you just lay them in the halls.
You know, some of them were hurt really, really bad. Some of them were just scared. Some of them were in shock.
The thing that I remember the most was everybody ran to help. Everybody was going to do what they could to help out.
If you could do anything for anybody, that was a time you would do it. I don't care what they said. If they probably slapped you in the face, you still would have tried to help them.
People are really good to you when they know you and know something real bad's happened.
You sort of have to get your life back together. Sad.
Every time the clouds would come again, people would literally get in their cars and start driving out Watson Boulevard.
The whole town would leave. I mean, people were just would panic.
You always have looming in your mind that it could happen again.
It was like a warning to me that, as we say, the Lord is in control.
Don't ever think it won't ever happen again. Eventually it will. It may be 500 years, 200, 100. But it'll make a path through here again.
At 82, Willie Stoltz still listens for the wind. When strong wind gusts rattle her chimes, her mind drifts to that day in 1953.
I knew the wind was blowing so hard, but I never seen a tornado. I didn't know anything about it.
When the storm struck, Stoltz was headed home from work while a babysitter watched her 2 young children at her Pleasant Hill home. By the time she arrived, her house was gone, the babysitter dead, and her 2 children missing.
And a little hysterical to begin with, and I thought to myself, if you're going to find these children, you got to calm down, because you can't go around screaming and hollering.
Stoltz, like hundreds of others, searched for loved ones, belongings, and answers. They wondered how all this happened in 5 minutes, with no notice, no warning.
The storm basically caught us by surprise.
Roddy Nixon, a meteorologist at Robins Air Force Base, says in 1953, radar technology couldn't detect the tornado. Now, Doppler pinpoints a storm's path, allowing them to activate the base's warning system a minimum of 10 minutes before it hits.
They do save lives. Early notification is critical in the process. It does save lives. It's a proven fact.
But Robins' 12 sirens can only be heard a mile outside the gates, leaving the rest of Warner Robins' 60,000 plus people to depend on television or other forms of alerts.
Well, the way I see it is if they didn't have the sirens, they wouldn't know to look at us.
13 WMAZ Chief Meteorologist Ben Jones says early warning systems play a critical role in driving people to their TVs for potentially life-saving information.
I always pictured as people out with their families and they're out with their kids in their yard. They're away from, even in this technological world we live in, we still get away from it and we get outside. And sometimes just a tone, a sound outside is enough to tell us what's going on.
At Houston County's Emergency Communications Center, Assistant Chief Kevin Knowles says they want a warning system similar to Perry's.
It all boils down to funding.
FEMA turned down the county's grant application last fall. Since then, they've applied for several more and await a response, knowing if a storm like 1953's hits again, the devastation could be far worse now than it was 55 years ago.
Now you have houses, subdivisions everywhere, so of course it's going to be a lot more damage.
Oh, I have to remember that.
Stoltz can't imagine more damage than on the evening she searched among the bodies for 2-year-old Scott and 5-year-old Esther.
We thought he was dead, and then somebody said, "This might be your son in here. He has big old brown eyes," and he did. He was sucking on a bottle. She was cold as ice, and couldn't speak. She was unconscious, and she looked dead. She was so pale and didn't move or anything.
Esther recovered a week later, still here with her mother 55 years later.
I got real upset for a long time when the wind would just blow a little.
Now on a clear day, the chimes soothe her, but when the clouds start to gather, they're a warning. In Warner Robins, Laura Lynch, 13 WMAZ Eyewitness News.